5.1 is all about graphing quadratics. Now, in these notes, we're not actually going to graph any quadratics. We'll do that in class tomorrow, but when we talk about quadratics, what we're actually talking about here are parabolas. In other words, anything that is, well, when we talked about x, that made lines. Quadratics or parabolas are going to be things from x squared. Now, there's three forms that you need to know. The first one is called standard form. Now, this standard form is different from the linear standard form that we did a couple of chapters ago. Standard form is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Now, standard form, we can harvest just a little bit of information here. What we can pull out of here is that a. We can pull out what a is. Here's a. Now, a is going to tell us a couple of things. One is going to tell us the orientation of the parabola. Now, if a is positive, it opens up. Something like this. If a is negative, it opens down. Something like this. Now, it's also going to tell us about the shape. So, A is going to tell us about the orientation. It's also going to tell us about the shape. Now, if the absolute value of A is greater than 1, it's going to be, well, we'll talk about that in just a minute. Here, the absolute value of A, if it's equal to 1, we'll talk about what shape that's going to be. And if the absolute value of A is less than 1, we'll talk about what's that going to be. Now, I think when we talked about absolute value equations, rather than making u's like parabola does, it made v's. And we talked about when A is equal to 1, that was a normal graph that did the work of one average guy. So it's a normal graph, something like that. I don't know. If A is greater than 1, this dude does the work of more than one man. So because he works so hard, because he's moving all the time, he gets really, really skinny. Or not skinny, I'm sorry, it's going to be narrow. Narrow. But because he works so hard, he goes up very, very quickly. And he gets skinny because he does the work of more than one man. Now here, if A is less than 1, if he does less work than one man, he's going to be wide. If he doesn't work very hard, he's going to become a fatty, boom, baladdy right there. Okay, so standard form tell us two things. Just tell us about A. It'll tell us which way it opens and the shape. Really, that's not a whole bunch that it can tell us about the parabola. We would have to graph it and actually look at it. The next form we're going to talk about is called intercept form. Intercept form, and no, this is not slope intercept form. With quadratics, we're just going to call it intercept form. Intercept form is this: y equals a times the quantity x minus p times x minus q. Intercept form. Now, intercept form is going to tell us a couple of things. One, it's going to tell us about A. See, A still exists. So that's still going to tell us the orientation and shape. But these P and Q's, this is going to tell us about P comma 0 and the point Q comma 0 are going to be x intercepts. That's different from y intercepts. That's going to tell us where it crosses the x-axis. So for example, suppose P and Q are something like this. This tells us where the parabola crosses the x-axis. That's what intercept form is going to tell us. And the last form that we're going to talk about here is vertex form. vertex form. Now, the book or some other places you might all also see it called graphing form. Graphing form. And graphing form is y equals a times the quantity of x minus h quantity squared plus k. Now, if you remember when we were doing absolute value equations back in chapter 1, or excuse me, in chapter 2, this should look familiar. Rather than absolute value bars, it's got squared here. Now, let's talk about the information that we can harvest from here. One, it's going to tell us about A. All right, check it. A is still here. It's still hanging around. So A is going to tell us the orientation and shape. But there's also another thing that we can pull from here. H comma K is going to be the vertex. Here's H and here's K. Now remember, H is like the opposite of what you think. Because it's x minus H, it's going to be the opposite of what you think. But K is straight up what it looks like. If it's plus 8, it's going to be 8. If it's minus 8, it's going to be negative 8. Okay, so these are the three forms, and you should know what you can pull from each form. Standard form, not much, just A. Intercept form, you can get A, so orientation and shape, and the X intercepts. And then there's the vertex form, which we can get the vertex and the A stuff. Now, no matter what form it's in, you should be able to take vertex form or intercept form. We should be able to take either one of these forms and put it into standard form. Let's do one last example. Let's talk about how that happens. Put into standard form. And let's say I give you y equals 1/2 times the quantity x minus 3 quantity squared plus 4. All right, what form is this in? This is in vertex form. Now, if we were to graph this, and we'll talk more about this later, which way is this going to open? Well, because A, here's A, it's 1/2. It's positive, it opens up. What's the shape going to be? Well, 1/2 is less than 1, so it's going to be wide. And where is our vertex going to be? Our vertex is going to be at the point, it looks like -3, but it's actually +3, 4. All right, so without even graphing this, this is the information that you should be able to pull about this form here. Now, our task at hand, though, is put into standard form. So, what we're going to do, remember, standard form is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Notice there's no parentheses or anything. So, let's unparenthesize this thing. Now, this says x minus 3 quantity squared. That means 1/2 times x minus 3 times x minus 3, then plus 4. So, with this x minus 3 times x minus 3 here, we can FOIL that out. So, this is going to be 1/2 times, now I'm going to leave the parentheses for a minute, but I'm going to FOIL this out. This is going to be x squared. Now, here's the thing. X squared minus 3x minus 3x, so it's minus 6x. -3 times -3 is plus 9. I skipped a step there. If you got questions, make sure you come and ask me those later. But I put parentheses because we still got this 1/2 to deal with. We're going to have to distribute this 1/2, and this 1/2 is going to be 1/2 x squared minus 3x plus 9/2 plus 4. Now, I still got to put this together, this 9/2 plus 4. 4 would be 8/2, so our final answer is y equals 1/2 x squared minus 3x plus 17/2. This is standard form. Now, again, really, standard form doesn't really tell us much. It's got A. just looking at this, you couldn't tell me the vertex or anything else. So this is actually a more useful form, but this is a review of foiling. You should be able to take standard form, or excuse me, vertex form and put it in standard form, or take intercept form and put it in standard form. That's the notes for today. Smith out!